The English soldiers, with their red coats, ruthless and driven by greed, tore through the tribe's camp like a whirlwind. Homes were ransacked, families scattered, and Dakota and Iona, along with other children, were snatched away. The soldiers saw them as easy prey, bargaining chips to control the remaining tribe or to be sold into a life far removed from their heritage. The year was 1882. 6-year-old Dakota, the native Indian girl, found herself transported to a bustling town named Conway, a place that felt suffocating compared to the wild freedom she once knew. The year was 1882. Meanwhile, 5-year-old Iona landed in Tulsa, a vibrant city that pulsed with a different kind of energy. The Johnsons, the family who took her in, were warm and adventurous. They encouraged Iona's fiery spirit, teaching her to ride horses with a natural grace, shoot a rifle with unerring aim, and speak with a strong southern drawl that often left the Johnsons chuckling. Here, she was placed in the care of the Millers, a stern but well-meaning couple. They tried their best to raise her as their own, immersing her in the ways of the white people. Dakota learned to speak fluent English, wear starched dresses that chafed against her skin, and play the piano with a surprising skill that even amazed the Millers. Both Dakota and Iona, young native Indian girls, excelled in their new lives. Dakota's music became a source of solace, her melodies tinged with a melancholic longing for the whispering pines of a Higa forest. Iona's adventurous spirit made her a local legend. Her skill with a horse and a rifle was unmatched by anyone her age. But even as they thrived in their adopted families, a gnawing emptiness remained. It was the absence of their brother, the stories of his bravery that fueled their childhood games, and the faint memory of a life lived in harmony with nature. One day, while rummaging through a dusty attic in the Miller household, Dakota, the young Indian girl, stumbled upon a faded photograph tucked away in a forgotten trunk. The image depicted a young Indian man with wolfish eyes and a mane of dark hair, surrounded by a group of smiling tribespeople. A jolt of recognition shot through her. This was him. This was a boy from her dreams, the boy whispered about in stories. Her brother, Ahiga the wolf boy. Despite the comfort and love, a yearning for something more gnawed at Iona. It was a yearning for a connection beyond the one she shared with the Johnsons, a yearning for the stories of a boy who spoke the language of wolves, stories whispered by traveling Native American traders who occasionally passed through Tulsa. These tales of her brother, a legendary figure in their culture, became a burning ember in her soul. It was a connection to a past she couldn't quite grasp, but one she fiercely clung to. Despite the comfort and love, a yearning for something more gnawed at Iona. It was a yearning for a connection beyond the one she shared with the Johnsons, a yearning for the stories of a boy who spoke the language of wolves, stories whispered by traveling Native American traders who occasionally passed through Tulsa. These tales of her brother, a legendary figure in their culture, became a burning ember in her soul. It was a connection to a past she couldn't quite grasp, but one she fiercely clung to. The revelation brought both Dakota and Iona to the same conclusion. The Broken Ravens held the key to finding their brother. Dakota, armed with her research and newfound knowledge of tracking skills gleaned from library books, decided to venture west, hoping to infiltrate the Broken Ravens. Iona, with Sun Bear's blessing and newfound skills, opted for a more direct approach. She would track the Broken Ravens down. Two native Indian sisters' journeys, though taken on different paths, led them both towards an uncertain future. Each carried a burning hope, the hope of finding their brother, the hope of reuniting their family, and the hope of reclaiming their heritage stolen a decade ago. The whispers of the wind carried their prayers, weaving a tapestry of fate that would soon converge in the unforgiving heart of the western frontier. Dakota, the native Indian young woman, clutched a tattered map pieced together from her research. It hinted at the Broken Ravens' location, a desolate canyon rumored to be their hideout. Finding them was only half the battle. Getting them to talk, especially about a past they likely wanted to forget, was another matter entirely. The dusty plains stretched before Dakota, the native Indian young woman, like a sun-bleached canvas. She rode her borrowed horse, a wiry Mustang named Comet, with a practiced looseness, her eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of the Broken Ravens. Weeks of travel had hardened her skin, replaced the starched dresses with worn trousers and a simple cotton shirt. Her once manicured nails were now calloused and chipped, a testament to her determination. Their journeys converged near the mouth of the canyon, a stark gash in the earth that seemed to swallow any light that dared enter. Dakota, the native Indian young woman, dismounted, the weight of a decision settling in her stomach. She knew this was a gamble, a dangerous one, but the thought of reuniting with her brother fueled her resolve. Iona, on the other hand, moved like a phantom through the rugged terrain. Sun-Bei's teachings had honed her instincts, turning her into a skilled tracker. Following a trail of faint hoof prints and broken twigs, she navigated the treacherous landscape with a quiet confidence. Her heart hammered in her chest with a mix of anticipation and fear. Would she recognize her brother after all these years? Would he even remember her? A guttural chant rose from the canyon's heart, sending shivers down Dakota's native Indian girl spine. It was a primal song, a call to arms that spoke of a violent past and a distrust of outsiders. Their steps quickened, the crunching of gravel underfoot the only sound that dared to intrude on the chant's rhythm. Iona emerged from concealed crevice, her face streaked with dirt and sweat. Seeing Dakota, a flicker of surprise crossed her features, quickly replaced by a warm smile. "Sister," she said, her voice rough with emotion. Dakota's breath caught in her throat. This young native Indian woman, hardened by the elements but with eyes that held the same spark she recognized from her dreams. It had to be Iona. Tears welled up in her eyes as she choked out, "Iona?" The two native Indian sisters embraced, a tangle of limbs and choked sobs. Tears, a decade in the making, flowed freely. They spoke in hushed voices, filling in the gaps of their lives, sharing stories of their adopted families and the gnawing ache of missing each other. The canyon walls tightened like a clenched fist as Dakota and Iona, two native Indian girls, ventured deeper. The once bright sunlight dwindled to an eerie twilight, broken only by the glint of hawk eyes circling overhead. The air, thick with a scent of dust and anticipation, hummed with an unspoken tension. The reunion of two young native Indian sisters was short-lived. A guttural voice echoed from the canyon's depths, a warning barked in a language they didn't understand. It was time to put their plan into action. With a shared look of determination, Dakota and Iona adjusted their packs and ventured deeper into the canyon. The air grew cooler, the walls closing in around them. The broken ravens were waiting. The sisters, united by a common goal and a bond forged in hardship, were ready to face them. At the head of the group stood a man, his face weathered by years of hardship and marred by a jagged scar that ran from his temple to his jawline. He radiated a menacing aura, his eyes glinting like shards of obsidian in the firelight. He must be the leader, the one they called Crow, the native Indian chief, the man who had led the attack on Ahiga's tribe. The path opened up into a clearing, revealing a scene both awe-inspiring and unsettling. A sprawling network of tents, constructed from animal skins and scavenged materials, clung precariously to the canyon walls. In the center, a bonfire crackled, casting flickering shadows on the faces of a dozen warriors. Their bodies were adorned with feathers and paint, their expressions etched with suspicion and hostility. Dakota, remembering their prearranged plan, stepped forward, her voice trembling slightly but firm. "We come in peace," she announced in halting English, hoping Crow understood the language. "We are daughters of Wasabi and Adoiti, seeking information about our lost tribe and also our brother Ahiga." A ripple of surprise passed through the crowd. Crow's gaze narrowed, scrutinizing them intently. He spoke a few gruff words in the same language used in the chant. A younger warrior, seemingly fluent in English, stepped forward and translated. The leader asked why you, two young native Indian women from white families, claimed to be children of Wasabi. His voice was laced with skepticism. Iona, ever the bolder sister, took over. "We were taken from our tribe as children," she declared, her voice ringing with quiet defiance. "We have proof." Reaching into her satchel, Iona retrieved a well-worn leather pouch, carefully extracting a necklace of polished stones and feathers, a treasured heirloom she'd secretly kept since childhood. Gasps echoed from the crowd as several warriors recognized the design. "This belonged to our mother," Dakota explained, holding up another object from the pouch, a faded photograph depicting a young woman with familiar eyes, holding two smiling girls. We remember stories of a boy who spoke with wolves. She added, her voice gaining strength. Our brother. Do you know anything about him? Crow remained silent, his gaze fixed on the necklace. A tense silence descended upon the clearing. The warriors exchanged uneasy glances, a flicker of doubt flickering in their eyes. It seemed the evidence had struck a chord, stirring memories they'd rather keep buried. Finally, Crow, the Native American chief, spoke, his voice a low growl. We have no dealings with stolen children or wolf boys. He gestured dismissively. Leave, and do not return. Despair threatened to swamp Dakota, but Iona wasn't ready to give up. She took a deep breath, stepping even closer to Crow. We know you helped the soldiers, she said, her voice surprisingly steady. Perhaps you also know where they took our people. Our tribe needs your help. The native Indian chief, Crow's jaw tightened. The atmosphere in the clearing crackled with suppressed anger. Just as it seemed a fight might erupt, a low howl echoed from the canyon walls. It was a long, mournful cry that carried a sense of urgency. One of Crow's warriors pointed toward the mouth of the canyon. A dust cloud billowed up, obscuring the entrance. A panicked voice shouted a single word in their foreign language. The Indian chief Crow's face hardened. Raiders, he snarled, his gaze shifting back to them. We have bigger problems now. You two stay put. If you're truly who you say you are, you'll help us defend our camp. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Iona's face, but Dakota saw the opportunity. This attack, however unwelcome, could be their way in. With a shared look, they nodded to each other, ready to fight for their place amongst these people, for a chance to find their brother and their tribe. As the dust-covered figures emerged from the canyon, Dakota and Iona, the daughters of Wasabi, stood shoulder to shoulder with the broken ravens, ready to face a new threat. Dakota and Iona, the native Indian young women caught in the whirlwind of activity, watched in stunned silence. The sudden shift from desperate pleas to fierce defense underscored the harsh realities of life on the frontier. Still, an ember of hope flickered within them. Perhaps, by proving their worth in this fight, they could earn the broken ravens' trust and unlock the secrets of their past. Iona, her hunting skills honed by old woman Sun Bear, grabbed a discarded bow and quiver of arrows. She knocked an arrow swiftly, her gaze scanning the approaching raiders. Dakota, remembering her childhood lessons in their tribe, spotted a loose boulder precariously perched on a ledge overlooking the clearing. With a surge of adrenaline, she started inching towards it, hoping to create a surprise attack. The battle between native Indians commenced with a thunderous roar. Arrows whistled through the air, punctuated by the booming crack of rifles and the anguished cries of fallen men. The broken ravens, despite their smaller number, fought with the ferocity of cornered animals. Crow, a whirlwind of movement and steel, carved a bloody path through the raiders. Iona unleashed her arrows with deadly precision, her aim honed by countless hours of practice under Sun Bear's tutelage. 2 raiders crumpled to the ground, their surprised expressions reflecting the unexpected resistance. Dakota, finally reaching the boulder, wrestled with its weight. Using every ounce of her strength, she pushed it over the edge. The boulder tumbled down with a deafening crash, pulverizing a group of native Indian raiders huddled near the entrance. A collective gasp from the remaining raiders echoed through the clearing. They hadn't anticipated such fierce resistance from a seemingly docile group. Their initial confidence began to waver. The tide of the battle started to turn. The broken ravens, emboldened by their early success, pressed their attack. Iona, the native Indian young woman, spotting an isolated native Indian raider trying to flank them, drew her bow again. Her arrow flew true, piercing his shoulder with a sickening thud. The raider screamed in pain, clutching his wound as he stumbled back. Dakota, the native Indian young woman, emboldened by Iona's success, joined the fray. Picking up a discarded knife, she charged towards a towering Indian raider who was about to overpower one of the broken ravens. The battle became a chaotic dance of steel on flesh, punctuated by guttural yells and the clash of weapons. Despite their initial bravery, the Indian raiders, disheartened by their losses and facing stiff resistance, started to retreat. Crow, the chief, with a final, savage blow, disarmed their leader and let out a victorious roar. The remaining raiders, their bravado shattered, turned tail and fled back into the dust cloud from whence they came. The clearing fell silent, the smoke from spent bullets and arrows stinging Dakota's eyes. Exhausted warriors surveyed the scene, their faces grim but alive with relief. Several broken ravens lay injured, their moans a stark reminder of the battle's cost. Iona rushed to Dakota, her eyes filled with concern. "You're bleeding," she exclaimed, spotting a shallow cut on Dakota's arm. "Just a scratch?" Dakota said with a grin, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. "We did it." Crow, the native Indian chief, approached the two native Indian young women, his gaze lingering on their blooded figures. A grudging respect flickered in his eyes. "You fought well," he conceded, his voice a low rumble. "For now, you stay. But trust is earned, not given." Dakota and Iona, the native Indian young women, exchanged a triumphant look. They had proven themselves. They were no longer outsiders, but warriors who had earned a place amongst the broken ravens. Now, the real challenge began, earning their trust and uncovering the secrets about their brother and their tribe. This fight was just a first step on their journey back to their tribe and family, back to their past. As the survivors of the battle tended to their wounded under the fading sunlight, Dakota and Iona, the native Indian young women, stood shoulder to shoulder, their hearts filled with a newfound resolve. They had come seeking answers, but they had found something more, a sense of belonging, a bond forged in the heat of battle. The whispers of the wind seemed to carry their silent vow. They would find their brother, their tribe, and together they would rebuild what had been lost. Days bled into weeks within the confines of the broken Ravens camp. Dakota and Iona, the young native Indian women, no longer outsiders but not quite fully embraced, settled into a fragile sense of normalcy. They helped tend to the wounded, learning the Ravens' herbal remedies from a wizened old woman named Shooting Wind. They participated in training exercises, displaying a natural aptitude for combat that surprised even the most grizzled warriors. During quiet evenings spent huddled around the crackling fire, Dakota and Iona, the young Native American women, chipped away at the Raven's stoicism, sharing their stories of life living among white people with a Native American tribe. Slowly, a flicker of empathy ignited in the Raven's eyes, a recognition of the girl's stolen childhood and unwavering spirit. One night, under a blanket of stars, Dakota, the young Native American woman, approached Crow, the Native American chief, his silhouette stark against the dying embers. "We understand your distrust," she began, her voice firm but respectful. "But we need your help. We need to know what happened to our tribe after the attack." Crow remained silent for a long moment, his eyes reflecting the flickering flames. Finally, he spoke, his voice laced with a weariness that belied his imposing figure. "We were promised passage west," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Land free from the white man's encroachment. We were fools to trust the soldiers." The native Indian chief recounted the betrayal, how the soldiers abandoned his tribe after the attack, leaving them stranded and vulnerable in unfamiliar territory. The broken Ravens, desperate for survival, raided nearby settlements in a desperate bid to reclaim some semblance of their lost dignity. "We may have aided the soldiers," Crow, the Indian chief, conceded, his voice heavy with regret, "but we never knew they planned to dismantle your tribe." A glimmer of hope flickered in Dakota's eyes. "Then you might know where they took them," she pressed. Crow shook his head, a grimace twisting his features. "We parted ways soon after. They moved north, seeking refuge with the Lakota. It's a long and treacherous journey." Disappointment threatened to engulf Dakota, but Iona stepped forward, her gaze resolute. "We'll find them," she declared, her voice ringing with unwavering determination. "We have to." Crow, the Indian chief, studied the faces of two young native Indian women, his weathered features etched with a mix of doubt and grudging admiration. "Finally," he sighed, a sound of resignation. "An old shaman is living in the Whispering Caves," he revealed. "He might know more about the Lakota's migration routes. But be warned, the caves are said to be haunted by vengeful spirits." A thrill of excitement coursed through Dakota, the young native Indian woman. Finally, a concrete lead. The whispers of the wind seemed to guide their path, leading them closer to their goal. The next morning, under the watchful eyes of the Broken Ravens tribe, the young native Indian women, Dakota and Iona, set out. They were armed with Crow's grudging respect, a map sketch on a scrap of hide, and a burning resolve to find their tribe and their brother. The journey to the Whispering Caves was fraught with danger, unforgiving terrain, unpredictable weather, and whispers of unseen things lurking in the shadows. But Dakota and Iona, the two young native Indian women, fueled by their shared purpose, persevered. They relied on their newfound skills, Iona's tracking expertise and Dakota's knowledge of the forest gleaned from her childhood memories. They faced down a pack of hungry wolves, navigated treacherous canyons, and endured nights filled with unsettling howls and flickering shadows that danced in the firelight. After days of hardship, the two young native Indian women finally reached the entrance of the Whispering Caves, a gaping maw in the side of a towering cliff face. An eerie chill emanated from the mouth of the cave, a tangible presence that sent shivers down their spines. They exchanged a hesitant look, a silent question hanging in the air. Were they truly prepared to face the unknown that awaited them within? The entrance to the Whispering Caves loomed before them like the maw of a slumbering beast. A chill wind, carrying the damp scent of moss and something more ancient and unsettling, snaked out, tugging at their clothes and whispering secrets through the jagged teeth of the cave mouth. Doubt gnawed at Dakota's resolve. Crow's warnings echoed in her mind, haunted by vengeful spirits. Yet, the thought of their tribe, of their brother, fueled a fire in her heart that outweighed any fear. Iona, ever the pragmatist, gripped Dakota's shoulder firmly. "We came this far," she said, her voice laced with a quiet determination. "We face it together." Taking a deep breath, Dakota nodded. Together, they stepped into the inky blackness of the cave. The entrance swallowed the last sliver of daylight, plunging them into an unyielding darkness. They fumbled for their flint and tinder kits, the rhythmic scratching a fragile beacon in the oppressive silence. Soon, flickering flames from two makeshift torches danced on the cavern walls, revealing jagged rock formations that resembled petrified claws reaching out from the darkness. The air grew thick and stale, heavy with the smell of damp earth and something faintly metallic. An unsettling silence hung in the air, broken only by the dripping of unseen water and the occasional fluttering of unseen wings. Every shadow seemed to writhe and contort, playing tricks on their already strained vision. Dakota, the young native Indian woman, felt a prickling sensation on the back of her neck, the undeniable presence of unseen eyes watching their every move. As they ventured deeper, the whispers began. Faint at first, barely audible over the dripping water, they grew louder, a cacophony of voices that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves. They were words in forgotten tongue, laced with sorrow and rage, a mournful echo of lives lost and battles fought. Suddenly, a flicker of light pierced the darkness ahead. Rounding a bend, they stumbled upon a vast cavern, its ceiling lost in the shadows. In its center stood a towering figure of a native Indian old shaman, shrouded in a cloak of animal furs that seemed to absorb the torchlight. His wizened face, etched with a lifetime of experiences, was framed by a mane of long, white hair. Even from afar, his eyes glowed with an eerie luminescence, pinning them in place. "Welcome, daughters of Wasabi." The figure boomed, his voice a deep rumble that resonated through the cavern. "I have been expecting you." The two native Indian young women, Dakota and Iona, in the cave, exchanged a surprised look. News traveled fast, even in this desolate place. Who was this man, and how did he know who they were? Carlos, the old native Indian shaman, emerged from the shadows, revealing a wiry frame that belied his imposing presence. His eyes, though ancient, held a spark of wisdom that seemed to pierce through their very souls. He gestured towards a cluster of weathered rocks around a small fire pit. "Come," he said, his voice softer now. "Tell me of your journey and what brings you to the Whispering Caves." Carlos, the old native Indian shaman, listened intently, his face impassive, but Dakota could sense the emotions flickering behind his aged eyes. When they finished, a long silence descended upon the cavern, broken only by the crackling fire. "The spirits of your ancestors have guided you here." Carlos, the old native Indian she-man, finally spoke, his voice a low rumble. "They know of your quest and the pain in your hearts." A flicker of hope ignited in Dakota's chest. "Do you know where our tribe is?" she asked, her voice trembling with anticipation. Carlos, the old native Indian shaman, shook his head, his gaze fixed on the flickering flames. "The Lakota migrated north, seeking refuge from the white man's encroachment. The journey is long and fraught with danger, but there may be another way." He reached into the folds of his cloak and produced a rolled-up piece of deerskin. Unfurling it, he revealed a crude map etched with symbols and lines that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly glow. "This map," Carlos explained, tracing a route with a gnarled finger, "leads to a hidden valley known only to a select few Lakota shamans. It is said to be a place untouched by the white man, a sanctuary for those seeking refuge." Iona's eyes widened with excitement. "Could our tribe be there?" Carlos, the old native Indian shaman, shrugged, his face unreadable. "It is a possibility. But reaching this valley is no easy feat. It requires traversing treacherous mountain passes and navigating through lands guarded by spirits both benevolent and malevolent. A daunting task lay before them, but the prospect of reuniting with their tribe fueled their determination. "We're willing to face any challenge," Dakota declared, her voice firm. Over the next few days, Carlos became the two young native Indian women's guide and teacher. He instructed them in the ways of the Lakota, teaching them about the spirits that roamed the land, the medicinal properties of various plants, and the art of navigating by the stars. He pushed them to their physical limits, honing their combat skills and endurance. One evening, as they sat around the crackling fire, Carlos revealed a final secret. "There is one more thing you must know," he said, his voice grave. "An ancient prophecy speaks of a child of Wasabi called a Higa, born under a blood moon, who would possess the ability to commune with wolves and unite the scattered tribes. Could this be your brother, Wolf Boy?" With renewed purpose and a map etched in their minds, Dakota and Iona, two native Indian young women, bid farewell to Carlos, the old native Indian shaman, and the whispering caves. They emerged from the darkness, blinking in the sunlight, forever changed by their encounter with the Spirit Keeper. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but they were no longer lost girls searching for their past. They were daughters of Wasabi, warriors, and now the potential harbingers of a prophesied future. The whispers of the wind seemed to carry their resolve, urging them onward towards a hidden valley, towards their tribe, and towards a reunion with their brother. The journey north for two young native Indian women was a relentless test of their newfound skills and resilience. Days bled into weeks as they traversed unforgiving landscapes. Towering mountains scraped the sky, their snow-capped peaks gleaming like mocking smiles. Gnarled forests clawed at their path, sunlight struggling to penetrate the dense canopy. Each step forward was a battle against biting winds, exhaustion gnawing at their bones, and the ever-present awareness of unseen eyes watching from the shadows. Iona, the young native Indian woman, guided by Kalazi's teachings, tracked their way through a labyrinth of valleys and gorges. Her senses, honed by her life with Sun Bear, picked up subtle signs, the direction of animal tracks, the whisper of changing wind patterns, the warning chirp of unseen birds. Dakota, drawing on her childhood memories, recognized edible plants and berries, their meager offerings helping to supplement their dwindling supplies. One particularly grueling night, huddled around a sputtering fire in a windswept canyon, doubt gnawed at Dakota. "Are we even on the right path?" she asked, her voice laced with despair. Iona, ever the stoic one, placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We have to keep going," she said, her voice firm despite the tremor in her fingers. "Carlos wouldn't have sent us on a fool's errand." Suddenly, a long, mournful howl echoed through the canyon, sending shivers down their spines. It was different from the howls they'd heard before, a haunting melody that resonated deep within them. They exchanged wide-eyed glances, a wolf, but one unlike any they'd encountered. As if summoned by the sound, a magnificent creature emerged from the shadows. Its fur was a mixture of silver and black, its eyes gleaming with an intelligence that seemed to pierce through the darkness. It stood a few paces away, its gaze fixed on them. Fear battled with a strange sense of familiarity within young native Indian woman Dakota. This wasn't just any wolf. It possessed an aura of power, a connection that resonated somewhere deep within her. Could this be? The wolf tilted its head, letting out a soft whine. A memory, long suppressed, flickered to life in Dakota's mind. A small boy with kind eyes, surrounded by playful wolf pups. Tears welled up in her eyes. "Wolf boy," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. The wolf responded with another low whine, its tail giving a tentative thump against the ground. Iona, the young Indian woman, watched, her jaw slack with disbelief. The stories, the prophecy, it all seemed to be unfolding before their very eyes. With a hesitant step forward, Dakota, the young native Indian woman, extended her hand, palm open. The wolf studied her for a moment, then cautiously approached, sniffing her hand with its wet nose. A surge of warmth and recognition flowed between them, a bond forged in some forgotten past. The wolf nudged her hand with its snout, then turned and began to trot down the canyon. Looking back with an intelligent glint in its eyes, it let out a single, sharp bark as if urging them to follow. Hope soared within the young native Indian woman, Dakota's chest. This might be their chance, the answer to their prayers. With newfound determination and a glimmer of hope guiding them, they followed the wolf, their hearts pounding with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. Perhaps, with the help of their newfound companion, the path to the hidden valley and their long-lost brother was finally within reach. Led by the spectral silver-black wolf, Dakota and Iona, two young native Indian women, navigated the treacherous mountain passes with renewed vigor. The wolf, whom they tentatively named Moon Shadow, proved an invaluable guide. It seemed to possess an uncanny awareness of their surroundings, leading them around treacherous cliffs and hidden crevasses with an almost preternatural ease. Days turned into weeks, the landscape becoming harsher with each passing mile. The air grew thinner, the nights colder, and their provisions dwindled further. Yet, the presence of Moon Shadow kept the two native Indian sisters' spirits high. His loyalty was unwavering, a constant reminder of their potential connection to their lost brother. One particularly harrowing night, as they huddled in a makeshift snow cave, Iona, the native Indian woman, broke the silence. "Do you think the prophecy is true?" she asked, her voice hushed. "About Wolf Boy uniting the tribes." Dakota, the native Indian sister, stared into the flickering flames, a sliver of uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "I don't know," she admitted. "But seeing Moon's shadow, it feels significant somehow, like a missing piece of the puzzle." Suddenly, Moon's shadow, who had been curled up at the entrance of the cave, perked up his ears. He let out a low growl, his fur bristling along his spine. Iona and Dakota, the native Indian sisters, exchanged a worried glance. The silence after the growl was heavy, pregnant with anticipation. Then, from the darkness beyond the cave mouth, a pair of glowing eyes emerged. The eyes blinked, reflecting an unnatural red light. A low growl, deeper and more menacing than Moon Shadow's, reverberated through the cave. It was followed by the unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps crunching on snow. Fear gripped Dakota and Iona, the two young native Indian women. This wasn't a regular animal. It was something else, something monstrous. They huddled closer, their hands instinctively reaching for the knives strapped to their thighs. Moon Shadow let out a defiant bark, his stance fearless despite the obvious size difference between him and the approaching creature. As the creature finally stepped into the flickering firelight, Dakota and Iona, the two young native Indian sisters, gasped. It was a monstrous wolf, its fur mottled with shades of gray and black, its eyes burning with an unholy red light. Its fangs dripped with a viscous liquid, reeking of decay. A primal fear surged through two native Indian young sisters, but they knew they had to fight. This creature, the big wolf, wouldn't hesitate to tear them apart. They readied themselves, their meager knives their only defense against this monstrous beast. Just as the creature lunged, a deafening growl echoed through the night. It came from outside the cave entrance, a sound so powerful it shook the very ground beneath them. The monstrous wolf hesitated, its gaze darting nervously towards the source of the sound. The monstrous wolf whimpered, cowering back. In the flickering light, Dakota and Iona, the two young native Indian women, could see the silhouette of a magnificent white wolf, its eyes glowing with an ethereal blue light. It was unlike any creature they had ever seen, radiating an aura of power and serenity. The white wolf let out a low, menacing growl, sending shivers down the monstrous wolf's spine. With a whimper, the creature turned and fled back into the blizzard, disappearing into the swirling white. The white wolf stood guard for a moment longer, its gaze fixed on Dakota and Iona, the two young native Indian women. Then, with a gentle nod, it turned and disappeared into the storm as mysteriously as it had arrived. Silence descended upon the cave once more, broken only by the crackling of the fire and their ragged breaths. Dakota and Iona, the young native Indian women, stared at each other, wide-eyed and speechless. Who was that white wolf? Was it another spirit guardian, a protector sent by the ancestors? They had survived another encounter, but the question remained, were they closer to finding the hidden valley, their tribe, and their brother? The journey continued, fraught with danger but also sprinkled with moments of wonder and potential allies. As the wind howled outside the cave, carrying the whispers of the unknown, Dakota and Iona, the two young native Indian women, knew their quest was far from over. The encounter with the monstrous wolf and the ethereal white guardian left Dakota and Iona, the two young native Indian women, shaken but undeniably hopeful. Moon Shadow, sensing their unease, nudged Dakota's hand with his wet nose, a silent reassurance. The next morning, they emerged from the cave, the world blanketed in a pristine layer of snow. Moon Shadow led them onwards, his path seemingly altered after the previous night's encounter. The landscape transformed into a vast, frozen plain, the horizon a stark line where the endless white met the pale blue sky. The air bit at their exposed skin, and the wind howled a relentless song. Days bled into one another, a monotonous routine of trudging through the snow, foraging for meager food, and battling the gnawing loneliness that threatened to consume them, but two young native Indian women did not stop their journey. One particularly bleak evening, as they huddled around a dying fire, doubt crept into young woman Dakota's heart. "Are we lost?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. Iona, ever the optimist, squeezed her sister's hand. "We have Moon Shadow," she said, her voice firm despite the worry in her eyes. "He knows where we're going." UST then, Moon Shadow, who had been sniffing the air intently, let out a low whine and perked up his ears. He turned and trotted towards a distant cluster of jagged rocks, his silver-black form stark against the white canvas. Hope flickered within Dakota. Could this be it? Had Moon Shadow, the silver wolf, finally led them to the hidden valley? With renewed energy, they followed him, weaving through the maze of rocks, their hearts pounding with anticipation. As they rounded the final bend, a gasp escaped young native Indian woman Dakota's lips. Nestled amidst the towering rock formations, hidden from prying eyes, lay a valley bathed in ethereal golden light. Lush greenery carpeted the valley floor, waterfalls cascaded down moss-covered cliffs, and vibrant flowers bloomed in defiance of the harsh climate outside. It was a haven, a secret paradise untouched by the harsh realities of the world. Tears welled up in young native Indian woman Dakota's eyes. They had found it, the hidden valley spoken of in the legends. But were there people there? Was their brother amongst them? Moon Shadow, the silver-haired wolf, let out a triumphant bark and raced towards the valley, disappearing into the lush greenery. Taking a deep breath, Dakota and Iona, two young native Indian women, exchanged a determined look. They had come too far to turn back now. With trembling hands, they pushed aside a curtain of vines, stepping into the hidden valley, ready to face whatever awaited them within. As they emerged from the veil of foliage, a collective gasp rose from a group of native Indian people gathered around a central fire. The people, dressed in hides and adorned with intricate beadwork, stared at the two Native American young women sisters with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Tears streamed down Dakota's cheeks. Yes, she choked out, her voice thick with emotion. We've come home. The woman's face broke into a radiant smile, and in that moment, Dakota knew they were finally safe. The arduous journey, the fear, the loss, it was all worth it to be back amongst their people. But the reunion was bittersweet. The question that hung heavy in the air remained unanswered. Was their brother, Wolf Boy, amongst them? As Dakota, the young native Indian, surveyed the faces around her, searching for a familiar flicker in their eyes, a young native Indian man, tall and strong with piercing blue eyes, stepped forward. His gaze locked with Hayes, and a jolt of recognition shot through her. He had the same strong jawline, the same kind eyes she remembered from her childhood dreams. In that emotional embrace of brother and two sisters, under the watchful eyes of their tribe and the golden glow of the hidden valley, Dakota and Iona, two native Indian sisters, finally found what they had been searching for all along, not just a home, but a brother, a family, and a sense of belonging. Their journey, though fraught with danger, had brought them full circle, reuniting them with their past and their purpose. The whispers of the wind now carried a different tune, a song of hope, of resilience, and of a future filled with the promise of rebuilding their shattered tribe.